Hello, everyone. This is Devin Thorpe for Your Mark on the World, and I am so excited to have with us today Emily Arnold-Fernandez. She is the Executive Director of Asylum Access, and she is working to help the 15 million refugees in this world gain their rights. So please welcome our great guest, Emily. Emily, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here, Devin.
Well, you are tackling one of the world's great problems, and I'm so excited to see it because there is so much pain, so much suffering going on in these refugee camps around the world. Tell us a little bit about why you got into this. Why did you start? How did you discover this problem and connect with it?
You know, when I was in law school, I had the chance to go to Egypt on an internship, and I was representing refugees who were seeking legal status, refugee status in Egypt. And I just hadn't ever thought much about the refugee system globally, how we respond to refugees. And when I got there, you know, I knew that I was going to be helping people to get refugee status that protected them from being sent home. But I kind of thought that meant that they'd be able then to get on with their lives once they had that status, and that it was just a matter of kind of going through this administrative proceeding to get everything taken care of. And then I learned a whole lot about the refugee response system, about our global system for responding to refugees. And I was shocked. I learned that the average time at that point, the average time in a refugee camp was about 17 years. Now it's up almost to 20. So that means that for refugees who are in camps, which is about half of all the refugees in the world, they're behind barbed wire. They're not allowed, not only are they not allowed to work or to access local schools, local health care, to be part of their local communities, but they're literally locked in behind barbed wire. They're not allowed to leave. And even for the other refugees, the other half of refugees who live on the margins of big cities. You know, in Egypt, my clients got refugee status that protected them from being sent back to a place where they might have been tortured or killed, but it didn't allow them to work or to go to school or to rebuild their lives in any way. They were just kind of stuck in limbo, dependent on aid, and with no clear way out. And that I think really was the spark that for me drew me into this work. And there were a couple of incidents in specific that I can tell you about if we want to go down that route.
Yeah, give us an example or two. Yeah, help us connect with this by personalizing it.
Yeah, well, you know, one story that I tell a lot is of a refugee who was 20 years old, who I met in Cairo, and he already had refugee status, so he was protected from being sent back. He was from Liberia, and he had left in the middle of Liberia's civil war when kids like him were being taken to be child soldiers. And he'd left Liberia when he was 10, so he'd been a refugee for half of his life. And when I met him, he was doing 3 different volunteer jobs. And, you know, so he'd been a refugee from age 10 to age 20 at this point. He couldn't work, he couldn't go to school, he couldn't do anything, but he had these 3 different volunteer gigs that he was doing, helping other refugees to navigate this process that he had to go through, teaching in an informal school to Liberian children that their community had set up because their kids couldn't go to Egyptian schools. And so we started talking, and I was asking about his motivations, but I was really sure that I knew what the answer was, right? I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to hear that other people helped him, and he's giving back. And instead, he looked me straight in the eyes, and he said, someday I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to be someplace where they'll let me work. And I need a resume. So I'm doing this to build my resume. And I was blown away. I mean, when I was 20 at a great university in the US, I was hardly thinking about my resume. And here's this kid who's had every door slammed in his face, who's thinking, how can I position myself so when that one door opens just a crack, I can get in there? And I thought, we're abandoning kids like him, and that is not okay. And so that's why I do this work.
That really is a compelling, amazing story. It really illustrates the problem, doesn't it? So tell us a little about the work of Asylum Access. Now, what are you doing to help these people? What's the program?
Sure. We're really looking in the countries where we work, and we work within countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Right now, we're in Ecuador, Thailand, and Tanzania. We're opening in Malaysia in October, and we'll be expanding into other countries in Central America in the next year or two. And in all of those countries, our goal really is to transform the entire human rights landscape for refugees so that they can get on with their lives, so that they can contribute to their new societies and build a new home. And so we do this by using a range of tools that are all focused on legal rights, if you will. So we do everything from one-on-one legal assistance, right? When you arrive in a country, you've just fled your home because you can't stay in your home anymore, because you might be killed, or because you might be, you're caught in the middle of a civil war. But you can't just arrive and say, all right, here I am. You have to apply for refugee status. You have to have some sort of legal protection, some sort of legal identity. And we help people navigate that process. Once they've navigated that process, if work permits are available, if it's possible to enroll your kids in school, we help them navigate those processes as well. We've helped, for example, in Tanzania, we've helped refugees start their own businesses, figure out what the laws are to do that. In Ecuador, we've helped refugees assert their rights within the workplace. So sometimes people will get a job and they'll be working, and then one month their employer says, oh, I'm a little short this month, so you're the one who's not getting paid because you're a refugee and you can't do anything about it. And thankfully in Ecuador, and this is, I'll talk about this part next, but thankfully in Ecuador we've changed the law so that actually they can do something about it. And so we do a lot. Sometimes it's just mediation with employers. Sometimes talking to them is enough to resolve the problem. And sometimes it's more formal. Sometimes we're going to the labor board or to court about these issues. So we provide legal assistance for refugees to help them assert the rights that should be theirs but often are not in practice, and just to navigate an unfamiliar legal system. We also train refugees to help others in their community do this so that not everybody needs a lawyer. And that's the kind of one-on-one work that we do. We do a lot of that work with volunteer lawyers. And so that allows us to leverage every dollar that we put into that into $40 worth of legal services. So, a 1 for 40 return on your investment is pretty good. Then the flip side of it, right, you can only do so much working one-on-one with people. The flip side is that we also look to change the laws and constitutions of the countries where we work. And our biggest success so far has been in Ecuador. We were really lucky. Because the Ecuadorian government changed in 2007, and the government that came in was very keen on human rights. Now there have been some rollbacks in some of those areas recently, but the Correa government, when they came in, had said human rights for all. And then they said, in order to make this a reality, we need to change the Constitution. We need to rewrite the Constitution. And so we took a group of refugees to present to the Constitutional Assembly and to talk about what they needed, what was important in their lives. And one of the big things, of course, that everyone talks about is we want to be able to work. Work gives purpose, work gives income, work allows us to choose what we're eating for dinner, work allows us to take care of our kids. And 3 weeks after the refugees that we worked with presented to the National Assembly, 5 articles were passed in the plenary session that protected refugee rights. And in the final Constitution, the Constitution gives refugees, 250,000 refugees, the rights to work and feed their families equally with Ecuadorian nationals. That's something that had never happened in history before. So that was a really exciting victory for us. We're also working in Thailand to change the laws there. We're working in Tanzania with the government, who's now made a public commitment to developing an urban refugee policy. So we're working with them on that, which would allow refugees in Tanzania to move out of camps and live and work in the city.
So how is your work funded?
It's a wide variety. So we have funding from the U.S. government and funding from private foundations, and we also get a lot of our funding from private individuals. So if anyone listening is interested in joining our work, please visit our website, asylumaccess.org. That's asylumaccess.org. And at asylumaccess.org, you can find out how to donate. You can find out how to volunteer if you're a lawyer and want to be one of our volunteer lawyer corps going abroad for 6 months. We would love to have you take part in this movement in whatever way is possible. So we're funded by people who care and people who want to make a difference, people who want to change the way that refugees are treated today, and we're also supported by our volunteer lawyers who make our work possible and make it possible for us to do it on really what is a very low budget given the scope of our operations.
Well, it is exciting to hear about what you're doing, and it seems to be addressing such an acute problem that it is. I call it acute. It's actually a chronic problem in so many ways, but it's also acute. It's something that's so painful to the people who are experiencing it, and yet they experience it for decades now, right? Just tragic. So I really commend you for the good work you're doing, and it would be exciting to have more people join you. I hope they will.
I hope so too. Thanks, Devin.
Well, I appreciate your time today, and look forward to being in touch with you in the future. Okay, Emily?
All right. Thanks so much.
All righty. Let's do some good.
All right.